Hello, and welcome to 5 tips for getting elementary students engaged. Even the most experienced teachers sometimes find it challenging to keep a classroom full of restless students engaged in the learning process. So, we're going to focus on 5 positive moves that you, as a substitute teacher, can do, even if you're only in a classroom for a day. You're welcome to download this slide deck and keep it as a reference. Just jot down this link, bit.ly/capital NKCES, lowercase 5 tips, and the number 1. And this will take you directly to these slides, which has lots of useful links throughout. First, just take a moment to think about a time when you felt really engaged as a learner. More than likely, you aren't visualizing a time you were sitting in an individual desk listening to a long lecture. So let's take a look at those 5 simple ways that we can increase the engagement for our learners when we're in the classroom. Increased engagement increases the retention of the material that you're teaching, and it's just more fun. So, engagement tip number 1, get students moving. Too much time sitting is not only unhealthy for our bodies, but it increases the chances of becoming unengaged. Getting students to move activates that entire nervous system, which allows information to be processed more effectively in their working memory. Retention and recall are going to increase, and more connections will be made. So, how do we do that? Well, there's actually countless ways we can do this, but here's a few ideas to get you started. One way is to use Go Noodle. Now, if you're preparing to sub in an elementary classroom and you haven't heard of Go Noodle yet, go there now. I'm going to head there, gonoodle.com, and show you what it looks like. So you're going to see at the top that you can search by categories, and there's lots of great categories: curriculum, SEL and mindfulness, sensory and motor skills, school life, and movement type. So let's go ahead and look at an example video. Let's look at sensory and motor skills, gross motor skills.
NFL Play 60 Totally Terrific Training Camp. Hi, I'm Coach Terry. You can call me Coach Terry, and you can call this the Totally Terrific NFL Play 60 Training Camp. If you want to make it to the end zone, you got to get moving for at least 60 minutes a day. And to be totally terrific, you got to train like the pros, fueling up with healthy snacks, warming up, and doing lots of practice. Are you ready? Then let's play 60. First, we'll kick things off with some warm-ups. My assistant coach Jerry is going to show y'all how to do it, so all you got to do is follow along. First, let's stretch those arms. Reach it up like you're trying to block a pass. Now, lean forward as far as you can, like you're checking to make sure your shoelaces are tied. Now, lean way back. Look up into the sky. Lean forward. Check your shoelaces one more time. And lean back.
So that's just one example. There's so many to choose from. Every video is different. I encourage you to explore this and find some of your favorites. You can pop this up on the smartboard or the screen in your classroom. You could also, if you're teaching virtually, share your screen and display these to your students at home. Another way to add movement is by using action responses. Whenever you need students to answer a question, have them answer using an action. This isn't only going to get students moving, but it's also going to elicit answers from the entire class instead of just one person raising their hand. For example, you can have a student touch or point to specific items. Put your finger on the letter O, or put your finger on the word government, or point to the heading on page 12. If you're teaching virtually, you can still ask students to do this and then show them on the screen where they should be pointing so they can self-check. You could have students act out responses with either gestures or facial expressions. For example, in math, students could signal which type of operation to perform by forming a plus sign, a minus sign, or a multiplication sign with their arms. If you're reviewing a new word, students could demonstrate the word furious, for example, with their facial expressions. Or you could do something as simple as a thumbs up for yes and a thumbs down for no. All of these could also be integrated both in the physical classroom or virtually. And right here under the photo, I have linked for you some more ways to get active with student responses. Another way to get students moving is to make an activity jar. Just fill up a jar with ideas for activities such as do 10 squats or do 10 jumping jacks. You could do this on popsicle sticks as shown here, or you could just put it on strips of paper. And whenever you see that kids are kind of running out of energy or they need a boost in some way, pull an activity out of the jar. Everyone can participate and hopefully it'll add a little bit of fun. I've linked here by the picture a blog post with lots of ideas of what you could put down for activities. You might like some of these ideas or it might spark some of your own. And one more example of ways to get students moving is by offering flexible seating. And you may have heard this term before, flexible seating. Oftentimes in education, it's referred to the use of seating options like beanbag chairs, couches, wiggle seats, and the like. But really, flexible seating is just allowing students the choice to sit where and how they're comfortable. So, in your position as a substitute teacher, you could, when appropriate, allow students the option of standing for an activity or a discussion. You could allow them the opportunity to go wherever they want in the room to read a selection. If you're teaching virtually, you could encourage them to turn off their camera, go get comfortable for something they have to read, and then return when they hear a timer, for example. Just like us as adults, if we're uncomfortable, we're more easily distracted, we're often unproductive. So, allowing students to work in positions and on surfaces that are just more comfortable for them encourages them to stay calm and focused and productive. So, I've linked an article here by the picture that kind of explains in more detail the benefits of this kind of movement. Engagement tip number 2, give lots of behavior specific praise. Everyone learns at a different pace, and sometimes it's the students who learn a little faster that get the praise. So rather than only commending those that get it the quickest, shift your praise to those that put in some kind of effort. By praising effort over intelligence, we can mitigate the chance that a student's going to become unengaged because they don't feel like they're keeping up. So, how do we do that? Here's a few things to keep in mind. So, we want to target those behaviors that we want to see more of course. When students engage in their small group work, when they use kind words, when they complete their jobs, make sure that you're using clear statements of approval, stating exactly who you're talking about and exactly what they've done. You want to make sure that your praise is both age and peer appropriate. Many kindergarten, first, and second grade students love to be praised in front of others verbally. As students get older, they might often prefer nonverbal gestures or written praise. And don't be afraid to ask them what they prefer. You could say something like, "Hey, I've noticed you're doing an awesome job staying focused on this matching activity. Do you mind if I share that with the group?" A sentence starter to keep in mind could be as simple as, "I like the way you are blank," and any variety of this. For example, "Wonderful, Joe, you have your pencil ready to start drawing." Or, "Nice, Kim, I like how you got started on that sentence so quickly." This can increase engagement and decrease off task behavior. And if you're interested in diving a little deeper into this idea, check out this video from NKCES's Dr. Laura Clark. It's linked here in green. Engagement tip number 3, allow for group work or partner work. So, lecturing certainly has its place in the classroom, but it can't be the only teaching method that we use in an elementary classroom for an entire day. Remember when you visualized a time that you were really engaged as a learner? So, discussion and sharing is a wonderful way for students to engage in the content at hand. So, what could this look like? Here's a few ideas. Think, pair, share is a powerful and very simple partner engagement strategy. It offers a quick way to break up content, process it, and interact with it. The steps for this strategy: number one, set up pairs of students. It could be as simple as person A and person B, or you could get creative. One person is spaghetti, the other person is meatballs. I recommend doing this part at the start of the day so that whenever you're ready to do this, it's all set up. It won't interrupt the flow of the content. Everyone will be ready. However, if you don't have the opportunity to set up partners at the beginning of the day, doing it in the moment will still work. Step two is to ask a specific question and allow students time to think about their own answers. For think, pair, share, specific questions work better than open ended questions. But allowing them that time to think about their own answers is very important. Step three, have students pair up with that partner and each take a turn sharing what their answer was. Step four, listen. And this step is for you. It's really easy to think, okay, while they're talking, I'm going to go ahead and prep this next activity, or I'm going to go ahead and get ahead on this next step. But the only way that this can be really effective and used for engagement is if you, the teacher, circulate through those partners and listen. It's also going to help keep them on task. At the very end of a think, pair, share, I would call on a few pairs to share with the whole class what they talked about. And only by having listened to them will you know which ones to call on to do that. Another chance to insert some group work is with talking chips. Talking chips is great for group discussion. And unlike think, pair, share, where that was better for a specific question, talking chips is really good for some of those open-ended questions that you might pose. So the way to do this is provide each student in a small group 2 chips and their discussion topic. Now, when it comes to chips, that could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be counting chips. It could be Unifix cubes from the math center. It could be crayons. It could be pencils. Any small token can be used for this strategy. Step two, any student in the group begins the discussion. And when they do, they place one of their chips in the center of the table. When they're done talking, another student will put their chip in the middle and continue the discussion. When all the chips are used, the teammates can collect their chips and can continue the conversation if there's still time. So this is great because when one student is speaking, the classmates can't interrupt because only a person that has put down a chip is permitted to speak. The others must be actively listening. It's also great because no one can opt out. Everyone got 2 chips. That means everyone has to speak up at least twice. And no one person in the group can dominate the conversation. So both talking chips and think, pair, share can be inserted almost anywhere, anytime to increase the students talking about their learning and checking their understanding. And you could certainly do some variation of these in breakout rooms if you're teaching virtually. Engagement tip number 4, ask questions. Engaging students with questions helps keep them involved in the lesson. Now, as a substitute teacher, you might not always be completely familiar with the content at hand. You may not have had a chance to preview text beforehand and not know what questions to ask. So, what I recommend is some check in questions like this. Tell me what you all came up with for number 1. Or, hey, how's your group doing with this section? Or it looks like you haven't started yet. Do you have any questions? How's your assignment coming? These types of interactions do have a huge impact on student engagement and behavior. Off-task students might feel more motivated to get back to work. Students who are reluctant to come to you with clarification or their own question will get a chance to ask you. distracted students, it might rein their focus in a little bit more. I love this quote by Anita Archer. Like good conversation, good instruction is interactive. So let's keep this in the forefront of our minds when we're thinking about the importance of asking students questions. We want less of this input, that's you as the teacher teaching something, input, 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 and then the day's over. See you tomorrow. And we want more of this, like a good conversation. Input, you as the teacher teaching something, then asking a question and getting some response. Then input, question, response. We want more of that kind of cycle throughout the day for good engagement in the content. Engagement tip number 5, build relationships. In order to gain students' cooperation and willingness to learn, good substitute teachers work to build relationships. Treat students as individuals with their own likes and dislikes and needs and interests. Even though you as a substitute teacher are going to spend less time with students, you can still convey respect and build trust, which is in turn going to build compliance and engagement. Take a moment to read this quote. So, some of the other engagement tips before this, asking check in questions, having some fun with those movement breaks or additions, and asking their preferences for praise will all contribute to building that trust and positive relationship with the students, even if it is brief for a day or two. So that's a wrap on 5 tips for getting elementary students engaged. Remember, every student is different and there really is no magic bullet, but hopefully these tips start you off in the right direction. So if you have downloaded these slides, click on this link down here at the bottom of your slide deck. If you didn't download them, simply jot this down, bit.ly/capital NKCES, lowercase engage, and the number 1. This is going to take you to a self-assessment so you can check your understanding of this session. A certificate of completion will be emailed to you when you get 80% of the questions correct. Thank you so much for taking on the role of a substitute teacher. This is a critical need in our community, and we appreciate you.